Did you know that the Tang Dynasty was only possible because of the achievements of a princess? Before the female Emperor Wǔ Zétiān, and before other powerful Tang Dynasty women like Shangguan Wan'er and Princess Taiping, there was another powerful woman. She was not born a princess, but was raised as a warrior and trained to be a general. She raised her own army and led them to victory against commanders of the Sui dynasty. She cleared the path for her father to establish the Tang Dynasty. She was the only imperial woman in Chinese history to be honored with a military funeral. She was Princess Pingyang. Hey everyone, and welcome to Tea with Amy. Today we will tell the story of the incredible Princess General, Princess Pingyang, and see how she helped to establish the Tang Dynasty. In order to understand the story of Princess Pingyang and the forming of the Tang Dynasty, we must first quickly talk about the dynasties that came before it. The Northern Zhou Dynasty and the Sui Dynasty. Let's start with the Northern Zhou Dynasty. There were many powerful noble families from the Northern Zhou Dynasty that controlled strong military forces. A prestigious and influential family was the Dugu family, led by the famous general Du Guxing. Interestingly, Du Guxing is not famous for his talent as a general. Instead, he is famous for his daughters. Today, there is a popular saying that goes, 得独孤者得天下, which means he who obtains dugu also obtains the world. This saying is used in reference to 3 of his daughters who married into successive ruling families. His eldest daughter married Yu Wenyu around 550 CE, who would go on to become Emperor Ming of the Northern Zhou Dynasty, making her his Empress Mingjing. In 557 CE, his youngest daughter, Dugu Qieluo, married Yang Jian while he served as a military general. Yang Jian would later become the founding emperor of the Sui dynasty, making Dugu Qieluo his empress as Empress Wenxian. Around 560 CE, his 4th daughter married Lǐ Bing from the noble Lǐ family. In 566 CE, they would give birth to a son, Lǐ Yuān, who would later become the founding emperor of the Tang Dynasty. Unfortunately, she would die before this happened, but she was granted the posthumous title of Empress Yuānzhen. These are the same 3 Dugu sisters that appeared in the fictional sea drama, The Legend of Dugu. And for our story, we also need to mention the Dou family. This was one of the most ancient and prestigious military families of the Northern Zhou Dynasty, led by the powerful Grand General Dou Yi. In 581 CE, Yang Jian formed the Sui dynasty and declared himself Emperor Wen. This new dynasty was formed out of the ashes of the preceding Northern Zhou dynasty, and he did not do it through conquest. Instead, he leveraged the power and connections that he already had within the Northern Zhou dynasty and usurped dynastic control from within. In order to ensure stability, he did not attack any of the existing noble families that did not fight against him. This meant that the powerful noble families such as the Lǐ family and the Dou family mostly retained their power and influence. Shortly after the Sui dynasty was formed, Lǐ Yuān from the Lǐ family married a daughter of Dou Yi from the Dou family. This created a powerful alliance of noble families. The Lǐ family now had a blood connection to the Dugu family and an alliance with the powerful Dou family. In 589 CE, Emperor Wen completed his dream of unifying China. By that time, the Lǐ family was fully established with enough military capacity and political influence to challenge the throne. In fact, they were so powerful that they were considered to be a partner family in the rule of the Sui dynasty. It was around this time that Princess Pingyang was born to Lǐ Yuān and Lady Dou as their 3rd child and only daughter. Unfortunately, her real name is not recorded in historical records, so we will refer to her as Lǐ Sānniáng, which means daughter that is the 3rd child of the Lǐ family. At this time, Lǐ Yuān was serving as governor of multiple prefectures, as well as commander of many different border garrisons. Lǐ Sānniáng was born into a household that was essentially a rotating command center. following her father around as he traveled between his different jurisdictions. She grew up surrounded by soldiers and was raised by a mother who came from the martial Dou family. Legends describe that Lǐ Sānniáng disliked dresses and preferred armor. It is said that she trained in combat skills, learned to ride horses, and studied the art of warfare from a young age. This unique childhood environment would set the foundation for her future as an atypical princess. In 604 CE, Emperor Wen of the Sui dynasty passed away. His son Yang Guang ascended the throne as Emperor Yang. Unfortunately, Emperor Yang was not a capable ruler like his father. Historical records describe him as disastrous and cruel. He is mostly remembered today for multiple failed projects that bankrupted the Sui dynasty. He enforced oppressive taxes and forced labor, leading to widespread starvation and peasant rebellions across the empire. In 605 CE, Emperor Yang held a grand imperial tour to the southern parts of the empire. He visited Jiangdu, which was modern-day Yangzhou, and quickly fell in love with the luxurious city. A few years later, in order to justify his visits to Jiangdu, Emperor Yang declared that Jiangdu would become the third capital city of the Sui dynasty, alongside Chang'an and Luoyang. The emperor's focus had shifted completely away from governance. On the other hand, the powerful Lǐ family was seen as capable and righteous. During the terrible reign of Emperor Yang, rumors started spreading among the people that the Lǐ family is more legitimate, and they will replace the Yang family. The Lǐ family was now more than a noble family. It seemed that they had the mandate of heaven. Around 610 CE, Lǐ Sānniáng married a young military official, Chai Shao. Now, Chai Shao was not just any military official. The Chai family was a noble military family, just like the Dou family, with a long history of military command. When they got married, Chai Shao was serving in the imperial palace in the capital city of Chang'an. Lǐ Sānniáng moved to the capital, and while she was there, she began to act as eyes and ears for her father, helping the Lǐ family stay up to date on the latest happenings of the imperial court. This marriage was another powerful political alliance for the Lǐ family. It's hard to say if any real love developed from this political arrangement. But historical records do describe Lǐ Sānniáng and Chai Shao as equal partners who trusted each other deeply. While not much about this marriage is covered in historical records, there are some interesting stories that were passed down through folklore and unofficial accounts. One story describes Lǐ Sānniáng and Chai Shao getting into a martial rivalry shortly after their marriage. Chai Shao challenged Lǐ Sānniáng to a test of bow skills, to which Lǐ Sānniáng responded by easily shooting down difficult targets and flying birds. Her skills impressed Chai Shao, and he exclaimed, "Sānniáng has the ambition of a man." Another story describes Lǐ Sānniáng and Chai Shao studying military manuals and discussing military strategy together. It is said that Chai Shao excelled in writing and archery. Sānniáng excelled in formation maps. By 615 CE, the chaotic rule of Emperor Yang had reached its peak. Numerous rebellions and uprisings started to appear across the empire. One story describes how Lǐ Sānniáng and Chai Shao opened their doors to starving refugees and secretly distributed food to the people. Chai Shao even worked with other government officials to help refugees escape punishment. Within a year, uprisings and rebellions have become rampant across the empire, especially in the areas around the capital cities Chang'an and Luoyang. Emperor Yang didn't want to deal with that chaos anymore and decided that he could just live in Jiangdu instead. He relocated the imperial court to Jiangdu, taking his most trusted officials and family members, with about 30,000 of his elite imperial troops for his own protection. The legends claim that it was around this time that a traveling priest visited Lǐ Sānniāng's family and prophesied, "The Lǐ family will replace the Sui. A woman among you will become great." By 617 CE, the rumors that the Lǐ family should take over the empire could no longer be ignored. Emperor Yang became paranoid that the rumors were true. he began to punish and execute prominent officials from the Lǐ family, and Chai Shao was nearly arrested. It is said that Lǐ Sānniáng bribed the palace guards in order to free him. The Sui dynasty was moving right towards collapse, and the Lǐ family was right in the middle of its path to destruction. Unofficial accounts record Lǐ Sānniáng discussing the state of the world with her husband, while she famously said, "The world has suffered under Sui long enough. Emperor Yang's madness must be stopped." Lǐ Yuān knew that he had to strike first, not only to save himself, not only to save his family, but to save the entire world. In early June of 617 CE, he sent secret messages to his family members and allies to warn them about the inevitable war. He already had his second son, Lǐ Shìmín, with him, but he needed everybody's help. He summoned his supporters to join his main forces, such as his eldest son, Lǐ Jiancheng, his youngest son, Lǐ Yuānji, and his son-in-law, Chai Shao. With the emperor and his elite imperial forces far away to the south in Jiangdu, it was the perfect time to act. In July, his army was officially mobilized, and his forces began to move south. They marched from his military base in Pingyang, making their way towards Chang'an. This was the beginning of the end of the Sui dynasty. There was just one problem. Lǐ Sānniáng and Chai Shao were still in Chang'an. They had been laying low since Chai Shao escaped his arrest. Lǐ Yuān's secret message to them was simple. Escape the capital. Rejoin the family at Pingyang. War is beginning. Chang'an was no longer safe. They had to leave the capital before news of Lǐ Yuān's rebellion reached the imperial court. However, they could not go together. Chai Shao could immediately leave the capital using his military position, but traveling together with his wife would be too suspicious. Due to the recent uprisings, every road out of the region was being watched, allowing only those with official business to pass. But what kind of official business would have required Chai Shao and Lǐ Sānniáng to go together? They had no choice except to separate. But Chai Shao was distraught. How could Lǐ Sānniáng be safe by herself in Chang'an? But Lǐ Sānniáng was not afraid. She knew what had to be done. She told her husband, "Go quickly. I am a woman and can easily hide. I will find another way out." So Chai Shao left. Back in Chang'an, Lǐ Sānniáng was not just going to sit around and wait. In August of 617 CE, she disguised herself to sneak out of the city gates and traveled to a remote family estate in Huxian, which was on the outskirts of the Chang'an region. This was as far as she could get from the imperial palace without an official military status. Then she sold everything that she could and started to gather soldiers who were willing to follow her. She needed to build an army, her own army. This was the beginning of what would later be known as the Army of the Lady. Historical records describe Lǐ Sānniāng's first act as one of compassion. She used all of the money that she had access to help the poor and the needy nearby. She opened the granaries, distributed food, and provided shelter for all of the refugees that she could reach. She told her soldiers that there would be no burning, no pillaging, and no harming of the people. She enforced discipline, and her followers became known as protectors. She began to build a name for herself and became popular among the people. By September of 617 CE, she had over several hundred loyal followers. But she needed more. Chang'an was a city built in a basin. While the immediate city itself sat on a lowland plain, it was surrounded by mountains and hills on three sides. These surrounding mountainous areas were a part of the Chang'an region, but official military control in these areas became weak as uprisings became more rampant and refugees became more common. At that time, a lot of bandit groups had formed out of desperate refugees, and they chose to hide in the mountains in the outskirts of the Chang'an region. Some of these bandit groups were even formed by smaller nomadic tribes from the north. Most of these bandits were only trying to survive. They had suffered under the rule of the Sui dynasty. Lǐ Sānniáng saw a unique opportunity with these bandit groups, and unofficial accounts record that she negotiated with them. She offered them food, safety, status, and a new life. They didn't need to be bandits anymore. By October, Lǐ Sānniáng had gathered most of the bandits in the surrounding area under her command. She took in these untrained but desperate bandits and reorganized them into structured units. She even absorbed existing rebel forces in the area that supported her cause. By the time the imperial court realized what she was doing, she already had a sizable force. The Sui dynasty officials who were left in Chang'an were in a state of chaos. They needed a figurehead to rally around and stabilize the city. They decided to proclaim the young Yang You as an acting emperor of the Sui dynasty, hoping to gather the support of the remaining Sui dynasty loyalists in order to fight against the growing external threats. Yang You was the grandson of Emperor Yang and was left behind as an unfavored relative when the emperor fled the city. But he was still a son of the imperial family and was the best option left for the officials in Chang'an. And then the Sui dynasty general Qu Tutong was dispatched to suppress the uprising around the capital, including the forces of Lǐ Sānniáng. But he failed. Multiple accounts describe how Qu Tutong's troops suffered defeat repeatedly against Lǐ Sānniāng's army. With each victory, Lǐ Sānniáng pushed forward and gathered more supporters. By November, she had taken control of Huxian, Zhouzhi, Wugong, and Shiping. Her forces had taken control of the entire western and southwest parts of the Chang'an region. These areas contained important farmland that fed Chang'an, which will now feed her own army. More importantly, she had cut off Chang'an from reinforcements from the west. With her father's forces coming from the north and the east, she had completely blocked the Sui dynasty forces in the capital from any path to escape. In just a few months, the army of the lady had grown to over 70,000 soldiers. With her victories, Lǐ Sānniáng had set the foundation that would allow the Tang Dynasty to be possible. Around November 8, 617 CE, Lǐ Yuān's unstoppable army had reached Chang'an. In the past few months, Lǐ Yuān's army had quickly taken control of the regions to the north of the capital. They took Huaying to control the enemy approach from the east. They secured the areas around Chang'an, surrounding the capital. And then they captured Tongguan, controlling the primary gateway to Chang'an from the east. They had gathered over 150,000 soldiers and finally met up with Lǐ Sānniāng's army of the lady. And Lǐ Sānniáng was finally reunited with her husband, Cai Shao. But they would continue to each lead their own soldiers. Cai Shao had been serving under the command of her older brother, Lǐ Shìmín, and they would be in charge of the frontal assault on the capital. Lǐ Sānniāng's forces would hold the southwest perimeter, protecting against the possible enemy reinforcements. Around November 18th, Lǐ Yuān's siege of Chang'an officially began. The capital was a huge city, with records claiming a population of nearly 1 million people. But Lǐ Sānniāng's army had already cut off the city's food supply. The city defenders were weakened by hunger and isolation, and confined behind the city walls. Morale rapidly deteriorated. It was impossible to break out of the siege. There were no reinforcements, and nobody was coming to help. Around November 29th, the city surrendered. Lǐ Yuān now controlled the capital city of the Sui dynasty. He took over the imperial palace and assured the remaining local officials that there would be no purges. His control of Chang'an was orderly, with no recorded chaos or pillaging, which was rare in ancient Chinese warfare. Some accounts credit the discipline of Lǐ Sānniāng's army for maintaining order in the city during this time. After capturing Chang'an, Lǐ Yuān did not declare himself the new emperor. He was still acting under the banner of trying to save the Sui dynasty. So instead, he decided to officially recognize Yang You's position as emperor. In December of 617 CE, Lǐ Yuān helped Yang You to ascend the throne as Emperor Gong of Sui. But Yang You was only around 12 years old at the time, which meant that he needed a regent. Lǐ Yuān knew the perfect person for this job. He named himself regent and began to issue edicts in the child emperor's name. Lǐ Sānniáng acted as a military governor during this time over the regions that she had captured. Her army of the lady continued to control the important food supplies of the area and became the backbone of the city's security and the logistics. In April of 618 CE, Emperor Yang was assassinated by his own forces in Jiangdu. When news of this reached Chang'an, Lǐ Yuān knew that the time had come. On June 18th, Lǐ Yuān forced Emperor Gong to abdicate, officially ending the Sui dynasty. 3 days later, Lǐ Yuān formed the Tang Dynasty and declared himself emperor as Emperor Gāozǔ. As the daughter of the new emperor, Lǐ Sānniáng was now a princess and was given the title of Pingyang. Imperial princess titles in the Sui dynasty and the Tang dynasty were almost always taken from names of important locations. Pingyang was unique as a political and cultural center of ancient China, and was the homeland of the founding emperor of the Han dynasty. By granting Lǐ Sānniáng this title, it was believed to symbolize ancestral legitimacy and dynastic rebirth, linking the birth of the Tang dynasty to the prestige of earlier dynasties. Some modern interpretations also suggest a more literal translation, where Ping meant to suppress and Yang referred to the areas around Chang'an. This explanation suggests that her title was meant to recognize her military contributions that led to Lǐ Yuān's victory. For her achievements, Princess Pingyang was granted the highest honors ever given to an imperial woman. Historical records describe her merit as essential to the foundation of the Tang dynasty. Some accounts even mention that Lǐ Yuān wanted to grant her a male prince title as a testament to her military accomplishments, but it was ultimately blocked by conservative officials. Princess Pingyang, as a female general, had helped to form the Tang dynasty. In 623 CE, Princess Pingyang suddenly died. She was in her 20s or 30s. The reason for her death is unknown. Historical records state that Emperor Gāozǔ ordered a military funeral for his daughter, something never before granted to an imperial woman in Chinese history, and would never be granted again. It is said that she had full military honors, with front and rear military bands. Her funeral procession carried military banners and war drums, and her escort were fully armored elite military guards. This funeral resulted in outrage from the young Tang Dynasty court. The master of court rites protested that it was not appropriate to use war music for the funeral of a woman, to which Emperor Gāozǔ rebutted. This princess has the highest of honors and helped establish the dynasty. She is not comparable to ordinary women. How could she not have war music? And with this, Emperor Gāozǔ also granted Princess Pingyang the posthumous character of Zhao, which meant bright or luminous, which some interpret as a symbol that she was the birthing light of the Tang Dynasty. And so she became Princess Pingyang Zhao, the only imperial woman in Chinese history who was buried with full military honors. Her husband, Cai Shao, continued his military career serving as a general of the Tang Dynasty, helping to secure the early borders and consolidate the new empire. He was eventually granted the title of Duke of Qiao Commandery and was honored as one of the founding generals of the Tang Dynasty. They had 2 sons together, and he never remarried after her death. But wait, we skipped 5 years. What happened before Princess Pingyang's death? And that's where things get interesting. We don't know. Nothing is recorded about Princess Pingyang between the forming of the Tang Dynasty and her death in 623 CE. Instead, we're left with legends and folklore of what could have happened. First, there is the theory that Princess Pingyang did not retire from military combat and continued to campaign on behalf of the young Tang Dynasty court. A fascinating legend from this story describes a desperate battle against the rebel warlord Liu Heita, where Princess Pingyang's army was trapped against overwhelming numbers in a mountain pass. Princess Pingyang ordered her troops to cook massive amounts of rice and pour the cloudy rice water into the ground. At dawn, the enemy forces saw the yellow rice water and thought that it was the urine of thousands of cavalry horses, believing that reinforcements had arrived. The enemy withdrew and let Princess Pingyang escape. This mountain pass is known today as Nyangzi Guan, or the Lady's Pass. And tragically, this theory ended with Princess Pingyang ultimately dying from her battles with Liu Heita. Another popular modern theory is that she died from childbirth complications while giving birth to her second son. Some believed that her active military leadership and physically demanding lifestyle led to physical strains that resulted in vulnerability. One last theory suggests that Princess Pingyang died as part of the politics of the new Tang Dynasty court. By 623 CE, there had been escalating tensions between her two older brothers, Lǐ Jiancheng and Lǐ Shìmín. It is theorized that she got caught between them and died as a result. Some suggest that she was assassinated. Others suggest that she died from sorrow at seeing her brothers fight each other. Lǐ Shìmín would later win this rivalry and become the second emperor of the Tang Dynasty as Emperor Taizong, but she wouldn't live to see it. Unfortunately, we will never know what really happened. Princess Pingyang was one of the most extraordinary women of Chinese history. She built and led her own army to victories and played a critical commanding role in the establishment of one of China's greatest dynasties. It is strange, though, that so much of her story is missing after the forming of the Tang Dynasty, forcing us to fill in the blanks using legends and folklore. Or maybe it's not strange at all. Maybe the ancient historians did it on purpose. Who knows? What do you think about this incredible princess general? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed today's topic, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Stay curious, stay magical.